All right, team, we might get started. So, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai, and welcome to this webinar, Breaking Barriers, the Value of Wāhine and Kōhine Across Sport and Physical Activity. My name is Maddi McLean, and I'm the Women and Girls Lead at Sport New Zealand Ihi Aotearoa, and I'll be your host for this webinar today on behalf of Nuku Ora. So I'd just like to start with a karakia, and this karakia is all about bringing us together and settling us into today's kaupapa. Tuia ki runga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki waho, tuia ki roto. Tuia te he tangata, ka rongo te po, ka rongo te ao, homie, huie, tā kie. So thank you all for joining us this afternoon, and a big welcome to those that are tuning in online. I'm really excited for this webinar that we've got coming up, and I'm sure you'll get a lot of value out of our guest panel today. So we'll introduce the team shortly. But before I start, just wanted to run through a couple of housekeeping things. So just encourage you to keep your camera and microphone off throughout the webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat function and type those in, and we'll make sure we schedule some time at the end of the webinar for any audience questions. The Nuku Ora team will also be popping some questions in the chat throughout the webinar, so please watch out for those and feel free to interact with these throughout. If you are having any technical issues, feel free to close the window and jump back into the link, because that often will refresh and help things there. And just one more thing, that the team, the Nuku Ora team, will also be posting a wee survey into the chat at the end of the webinar, and it would be great to get your feedback on today's session. So that's all the housekeeping, but in order to introduce us to today's webinar, Nuku Ora is looking to shine a light on wāhine and kōhine, women and girls, this week. They've been undertaking a number of workshops, connects and activations across the week to encourage and support women and girls from all areas of sport and active recreation, and they've been looking at a particular focus on the women and girls in sport and active recreation strategy outcomes. So those outcomes are focused around leadership, participation, and value and visibility. So today's webinar is going to focus in on the value of wāhine and kōhine across sport and physical activity, and we will hear from a handful of top New Zealand sportswomen and where they have been on their journeys, the value of physical activity and what that's brought to their lives, some of the challenges that they've faced on their journeys, and a little bit more about what change is required to empower women and girls in this space moving forward. So we know that it can be quite challenging to make a change, and it can be a little bit daunting to realise that change is temporary and that impact might not be expected. But when it comes to women in sport and physical activity, we know that every little step counts. So it's important for women and girls to have those opportunities to be active and also have them involved at all levels of the sport and recreation sector. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panelists. So I'm just going to introduce their names, and then I'm going to get them to say a little bit more about themselves and maybe one way that they currently like to be physically active. So we've got Esther Keown, Amanda Rasch, and Jasmin Scott. So we might start with you, Esther, if you'd like to introduce yourself to the crew.
Yeah, thanks, Maddi. Nice to be here. Yeah, I'm excited to be part of this panel and feel really honoured today to be here. Yeah, my name's Esther and I am from Femmi. So Femmi is a company that I started with my friend, and it's really all about empowering women in sport through education, movement and connection. So we are really passionate about keeping young girls in sport and addressing those who still are involved with sport and how they can make the most of it and really appreciate their bodies and every part of their female physiology. So that's a little bit about the company that I work for, but I am also a runner myself. So I've been competing in running since I was about 13 years old. I had a little hiatus at one point, but yeah, running has been my favorite active movement since a young age, but I used to play a lot of different sports as well.
Thanks for that, Esther. Amanda, we'll hand over to you.
Talofa team. So my name's Amanda. I'm a proud Samoan-born Kiwi girl. I actually work at Nakora as well, in the healthy active learning space. So supporting primary school teachers to create more physical activity opportunities for our tamariki. In terms of sport and movement, personally, I've been involved, with sport for pretty much my whole life. Dabbled in a bit of soccer right through my schooling years, and then went over to rugby and never really looked back. So that's a bit of background about me, and I will chuck it over to Jazz.
Thanks, Amanda. Kia ora, ko Jasmin Scott tōku ingoa. So I am like Amanda. I also work for Nakora. My role is in youth development and active recreation. So it's all about using physical activity as a vehicle towards impacting positive youth development for young people and ensuring that rangatahi can thrive in the Wellington region. Movement-wise, netball is my sport, and that's where I get my competitive little scratch that itch. But I just love being outdoors. So a way that would make me happy through movement is getting outdoors and going for a walk or jumping into the ocean that we're so lucky to have here in Wellington.
Thanks, Jazz, and thanks everyone. Looking forward to getting to know a little bit more about you all and your stories throughout this webinar. So today's session is going to cover off some key topics, including exploring the idea of value, some life challenges that the panelists may have overcome, the idea of change inspires change, some key lessons learned, and we'll also look at some advice for the next generation. So just really encourage you to pop any questions that you have into the chat, and we'll look to answer those throughout the webinar. So if we want to start off with the first topic of value and just exploring in a little bit more detail what that means. First question for the panelists to consider is, what value do women get from being active and or participating in the sport and recreation sector? So we might start with you, Jazz, for your thoughts on that.
It's a big question. There's so much value from it, and it depends of what's, I guess, you're looking for, but it's a huge social aspect. I think when people are looking at a way to connect with others and find ways to connect, being physically active with other people is a really good way to do that. And I guess that links to mental health. Some people might really struggle to engage socially in some situations, but putting them in that physical activity environment or a sport environment releases that pressure of maybe social anxiety or meeting new people, because it gives something else to focus on. So I feel like it's a really good tool to connect, but for your mental health as well as your social health.
And how has that benefited you personally throughout your experience with physical activity, Jazz?
Big. I'd say a lot of my friends are netballers or people who are in sport, because sport has been that big part of my life. That's where I found people that I have really similar values to, or really similar personality types to, but also been challenged with different types of humans and different people, and seen the strength in that. So it's been huge, but it's also been really big at building my own confidence of being around other people.
Awesome, that's super important. How about you, Esther?
I think the value for me, and what I've seen with a lot of the women we work with at Femmi and young girls that we've worked with as well, is the confidence that sports brings. I think like moving your body in a purposeful way and feeling the strength within your body can be really incredible for building confidence. I know for myself it's really helped, and it's transferred to other aspects of my life as well. So just, taking away, I guess, this long-standing view for women that sport is about the way we look. And I think that's something we really focus on, taking that whole aspect away in Femmi. We talk about the way that we feel from sport and the way that it builds our confidence and it builds our ability to believe in ourselves, and that we're able to, tackle hard things and do hard things when we put our mind to it. So I think for me, it's really been about confidence building over time. I think sport there's a balance, and when sport becomes toxic, which it did for me, it can be bad for your confidence. So it's always about taking it back to that. Why did you ever start sport? Because you did it for fun, you did it to socialize, and you did it to build your confidence. So yeah, that's like the main thing for me. And then I think also inspiration, like I think we can all say recently, like watching the NZ women's rugby team at the World Cup, seeing that incredible crowd there, like I was crying in the bar with inspiration because I'd never seen anything like it. I was like, this is incredible. And finally women have this like, you know, pedestal that they should have had their whole lives. So just like seeing that gives so much inspiration and excitement for hopefully young girls coming through to continue to play sports. So yeah, those are kind of the two things for me that it's really done.
Awesome, and I'm sure we were all pretty inspired by that that event and the way those women represented our country across that tournament. So it was pretty neat to see. Amanda, if you got any thoughts on the value piece?
Yeah, just echo what Jazz and Esther have said as well, especially the connections part of it. Like, yeah, I've made some of my best mates through sport, and yeah, the experiences that I've had through it have been amazing. Yeah, just that empowering, like just feeling confident, feeling strong. It just, yeah, plays a big part in your mental well-being. Yeah, so yeah, that's me.
So we've got some really great themes coming through there, from connections to supporting mental well-being, that confidence piece, empowering yourself. And I really like Esther's point around connecting to the why of what it really means for you to be active. So really great scene set there, team. Next question we'll look to dive into is a little bit around some of the challenges you might have faced in your life and how being physically active has supported you to overcome any health or life challenges, and sort of how that has helped you to get to where you are today. So Esther, I wondered if you might start us off with this one.
Yeah, sure. I think my journey with sport's been quite up and down. So like I started running at a young age and I was pretty good at it. And I did the old specialised too soon, which we know is not great for young sports people. But I ended up, you know, under a coach that, yeah, really promoted in athletics that the skinnier you are, the better you'll be at running. He was really pushing me to run way too many kilometres for someone at the age of 14. I think I was running anywhere between 80 and 100 kilometres a week with a growing body. And I guess those ideas behind around being skinny and being lean led me to change my behaviors towards food. And I think before that, my love for running was really like innocent, and there was like a beautiful reason behind why I did it. I just loved like pushing myself and running as fast as I could, and it was just really exciting and fun. And then it became quite toxic after that. So yeah, I ended up suffering anorexia when I was 15, and I lost my menstrual cycle, suffered, you know, RED-S, relative energy deficiency syndrome in sport, and had stress fractures and glandular fever and was really unwell. So I ended up seeing a nutritionist and getting better, but my sort of love for running had gone at that point. And I think back to me as a 13-year-old, and I wanted to go to the Olympics. I had big dreams and I was really passionate about it. And then unfortunately, I was probably put in the wrong environment, and yeah, it led to me actually quitting running when I was 18. So yeah, I've gone back into it now. I've still suffered coaches telling me I'm too big, and it's a really common story, especially in individual sports, running, swimming, those sort of sports, that body weight is really promoted to be smaller. And that's something that really needs to change, because the ultimate goal is to have your menstrual cycle, and that shows that you're healthy and you're fueling enough and you can continue training at a high level. So yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges I've probably overcome, is building my confidence back from going through that, and then also my self-belief. So yeah, I've managed to compete at a pretty high level again as a senior, but I still wish that I'd been in the right environment when I was a young girl, so that I could have potentially, you know, got to those Olympic dreams that I had as well. But in saying that, I wouldn't change what I've been through, because it meant that I started Femmi alongside one of my best friends. So yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge I've faced in sport.
Thank you for sharing that, Esther. And it's, yes, I guess something we see in a number of cases for young women throughout New Zealand. And we know the benefits that sport and physical activity can provide, but it's also the young women aren't getting the right messaging that can lead to sort of harmful behaviours, and really important to be able to change that narrative. So it's great to see the work that you're doing now with Femmi to address that. So really using your passions to drive change in that space. So that's really awesome to see. Amanda, have you got any examples of how being physically active has supported you throughout your life to overcome any health or life challenges?
Yeah, I guess in terms of the challenges I faced, the biggest ones have been from physical activity, so like my injuries through sport. But yeah, it's taught me a lot. It's given me a different perspective on life. Like, I think when you play sport from a young age, it kind of becomes your whole world. So when I did get injured, it just gave me that perspective that it's not everything, and it gave me, I valued more time with, things that fill my cup, like family and friends and that sort of thing. Also helped me to find balance between, back then it was study and sport, and then now it's work and sport, which is really important. I find a lot of people, you put all your eggs into one basket, and then like having that balance, because it's easy to get burnout from that, which is the last thing you want to do, and something that I have experienced, and then just the resilience that you build from that. And that's, you can transfer that into anything in life. When things go bad, it's just like, okay, it's it's going to be okay, and storms don't last forever, kind of thing. But for me, when I'm down in the dumps, going for walks really helped me to clear my mind. So I don't, I'll rather go for a walk for my mental health than going to play sport or something like that. So that's how physical activity has helped me in tough times.
Awesome. And I love that piece around going for a walk. That's also what I do if I'm having a bit of a rough day. It's just a great way to clear the mind. But I really think that point you raised around trying to take a different perspective and not seeing, I guess, your sport as your identity, and so not fully recognizing yourself as, I'm a swimmer or I'm a rugby player, but I'm a daughter, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, and acknowledging all those other key things in your life, so that if injury does take sport away from you at some point in time, you've still got those other things to connect into. So really great messaging there. How about you, Jazz?
I could be quite similar, but I'll try and go on a different topic, I guess, in terms of challenges. But I guess one is kind of more of that life challenge, that particularly when you are younger, that the sacrifice you make when you do take on something that takes up a lot of time. And I think my biggest one was trying to choose between, I was missing out on a lot of social events, and missing out on a lot of things that I just wanted to be a part of when I was younger with my friends, but weighing up, is that the right decision? Because at the moment, that time, I was being told that I had to choose to prioritize netball, and I had to play this, and I had to do this training. So I missed out on a lot, I guess, as growing up, which, similar to Esther, it cracked me, and I think it stopped. I lost my love for it, and I tried to quit and hang my boots up earlier than maybe I should have. I think I had my dad there to support me to make a little bit more of a wiser or a more thought out decision of what that could impact me long term. But it helped me learn that sometimes I did make the wrong decision of when I prioritized sport, but that helped me learn what my non-negotiables were and what those things I really valued were. I missed a best friend's hendo when I was a bridesmaid in another country because I had something in netball, and I think that's where I learned that I regret that when I look back. But there's a lot of things that I don't regret that I missed, and at the time it seemed like it was the biggest deal ever. So it's helped me find my boundaries, and it's helped me find where my values are and what I really prioritize in my life, which has been an amazing thing to learn.
That's awesome, and such important messaging, and particularly around how we can find balance in our life. But I love a theme that I picked up from all three of our panelists there was they've taken the opportunity to learn from their experiences as well, and have that kind of reflective piece. And I guess that piece has sort of brought you to where you are today as well. So that's really awesome, and great that you can kind of share those stories with other people as well. Quite keen for us to have a chat about the topic of change inspires change. And, we've touched on the fact that our panelists are, athletes, but they're also have their roles off the field as well. So the next question will explore an example of a change that inspired another change for women and girls. So might be thinking about your role in your work, or just some personal experience that you've had, but really keen to know an example of a positive change that has had an impact in the wider community around you. So Amanda, we might start off with you for this one. Got any practical examples of that?
Yeah, so I've hung up my boots now, so I'm actually coaching my club team, so Ori's in Ruma, the women's team there. And I think, like, selfishly, when I was a player at trainings, I would be like, oh, this is, we need to be pushed a bit harder, or oh, we need to do a bit more running and that kind of stuff. But then now as a coach, it's interesting looking in now, because it's like, the majority of the girls that are there aren't there. They don't all aspire to be Black Ferns, or, they're just there to have fun and to connect with the girls. So it's like, I think the focus at the start of the season was a lot more performance driven, and you could just see the girls just weren't there, like they didn't want to be there. Whereas we've kind of flipped the script to make it the focus just around being more fun. So we've like mandatory games at every training, put them into mini teams. We had a camp on the weekend, and they've really come out, and just seeing the connection is really cool, and it's transferred onto the field, which is a massive win for us. So just changing the focus, and bringing it back to why they want to be there, and that's just to hang out with their friends and just have fun, have a laugh, but also finding that balance where we're challenging them at the same time too. So
awesome. And that fun element is super important, because we're seeing young women between the ages of sort of 12 to 15 starting to drop out of some different physical activity in sports. So being able to find ways to keep them engaged and motivated based on what they want to do and their aspirations. And as Amanda said, it's not always performance focused. So friends, social connections, that's a really big one for keeping them in today. So that's great that you're applying those learnings. And what's the I guess biggest reflection that you've had around finding out what's fun for those young women, Amanda?
I think it's just the simple things. Like, I think when you come in, you kind of overcomplicate, but it's just the simple things, and actually asking them. Like, I know as a player myself, when you give me a voice, like, I feel part of it, and I feel like my voice is heard. So really making a conscious effort to ask the girls as well, like, helping them to plan things out, or what do you guys want to work on. Like, it's easy for me to sit there and watch and think of things that I can see, but what do you want to work on? So just including them in that chat.
Absolutely, that youth voice is critical, and giving them that sense of agency. And I'm sure Jazz, through your role at Nuku Ora, you'd know the importance of youth voice and encouraging that as ways to get young people active. So I wondered if you had some thoughts on that, and also any practical examples of change inspires change as well.
I guess on the first part of youth voice, that's a huge part, and I think that's a part of any age group as well, is giving them some agency and some voice and opportunity to speak out. It gives them a sense that you care, and gives them agency, but it gives them the time that you trust them and empowers them. And I think that's kind of leads to, similar to what Amanda was saying, with making people do what they want to do. It keeps them happy. And I think that's the main thing for me, is with change inspires changes. I had some older players when I was younger that made me realise that actually enjoying your environment, whether you are grassroots, looking to just do it as a social thing, or a high performance, usually happiness is kind of a reason for all of it, but we're all using different reasons and things that generate our happiness. And there's the quote, like, it's more high performance sport wise, but they say that women need to be happy to win or succeed, whereas men need to win and succeed to be happy. And I think that's a really big pull out for our women and girls, is happiness is a really big driver. So it's important to pull that in for why you're doing it. Like Esther was saying, she needs to find her why for running again, because sometimes the hard things get in the way. And I think that's impacted myself, not only as a player, but when I was a teacher. I thought I'd love the kids that love sport, and those were going to be the kids that I engage with most. But it turns out actually I really wasn't bothered about that group of young people, because it was more those that were not engaged. So how could I make them enjoy that environment? Because the reality is we just want them to be participants for their life in what they choose to be. And that's kind of forwarded into my work, with just ensuring that they have their voice and do what makes them happy, because everyone finds happiness in a different way. So that's probably my biggest. Whether that's actually changed people's lives from what I'm doing, I'm still trying to find out, but hopefully in the future I can see that change for young people in Wellington.
That's awesome. And yeah, happiness is absolutely critical to being able to fully embrace being active, and the real value that we get from it as well. So that's awesome. Esther, did you have anything you wanted to share around the idea of change?
Yeah, sure. I think like the main ones I can think of since starting Femmi, we are a one-on-one coaching company. So we have athletes that we coach one-on-one around their cycle and training and running, but we do a lot of things on the side that are really targeted at keeping young girls in sports. So we did a scholarship, we run 2 scholarship programs where young girls can apply and come through like an 8-week mentorship program with a group of coaches. And we had 3 different pillars. It was for young girls who do sport for community and connection, young girls that do it for mental health, and young girls that do it for performance. And we know that obviously it's quite often all 3, but you know, what was their main driver for being involved in sport? And we made sure we picked a lot from each group, so that we had a lot of different arrays of sports and the different reasons of why they do sport. And I think a couple of success stories from that. The first scholarship program, one of the young girls was actually suffering an eating disorder at the time. And so we really helped her through that. She ended up going back to Germany, and we just stayed in real close contact with her, and she's recovered now, and she's got her period back, and she goes along to Femmi run communities, which we have in 8 different cities across Australia and New Zealand. And she always goes to the one in Auckland, and she was brave enough to show up every week, but only bike, because she knew that she didn't want to train too much while she was trying to get her cycle back, because we'd sort of told her how important it is that she fuels a lot, recovers, and she can get it back, and then she can start looking at getting back into running. And so that was like an awesome story to be able to help her through that. And obviously a success story. We know how prevalent and dangerous eating disorders are. So yeah, I was so happy when she got her cycle back and she was feeling good about herself again. And then the second one was a young girl in New Zealand who's an incredible runner, and she was about to go over to the States. And she revealed, after we'd been through about 4 weeks of mentoring, that she hadn't had her cycle for about 1.5 years. And she was about to go to America and join a team where we just know that they're probably going to be pushing their bodies very hard, be in that college NCAA system. And so we just had a big talk to her about, like, this is probably the most important thing you could do right now for your like sustainability in sport. And she ended up as well getting her cycle back before she went to America. So like, just, I think the lack of education is a huge thing. And those young girls didn't know that they were putting themselves at risk for potentially not being able to play sport long term, and their body's long-term health as well. So yeah, I think those are a couple of success stories from Femmi, and like the impact that we've had. I think it's just how can we get the education out there more, and we're trying to make it fun and engaging, and reach more people, reach more young girls and parents and coaches and everyone who works with women in sport.
And that's a really good point around the support networks for any woman or girls basically who wants to be involved. And I wondered if you could speak a little bit more maybe to your support network and how they've helped you on your journey as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think my biggest support network when I was younger, would have been my family. My mum realised that things were going on with my behaviours around food, and she actually said to me, she said, you're not going to be allowed to run. I'm not going to let you run. And that obviously was a pretty good negotiating thing for me, because at that point I still, that was my main thing that I was passionate about as a young girl. So her stepping in and like taking that action probably saved me a lot of time being, suffering that eating disorder, which I was really lucky. And then so when I quit running at 18, I ended up doing everything that a runner wouldn't do, or an athlete. I was partying, doing the opposite of what you would imagine an athlete or someone who considered themselves to be an athlete do. And I was suffering a lot in terms of like losing that sense of identity that you touched on, Amanda. And like, I think going from thinking I was a runner to not being it anymore, and then I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So for about 4 years, I really struggled with my mental health. And my sister, she sat me down and she said, you need to sort your life out, go back to uni and get back into training. And so I did all of those things because I listened to her. So I'm just really lucky and privileged that I have like an amazing family. But then also the team around me, like Lydia, the co-founder of Femmi, she and I have similar stories. She went through it at a different time in life, but I think everyone within Femmi's walls has similar stories, and there's so many women who have been through things that we have been through, and it's just like opening up those conversations and being able to speak about, maybe losing the menstrual cycle, or suffering with body image, or anything like that. Like, I think what we've created is a community that feels open enough to speak about it. So I think I'm so lucky to have the women that I work with, and then also just the wider Femmi community who are all, on the same mission as us. So those are probably my major support people. And obviously my partner, he's an absolute legend, but yeah.
Thanks, Esther. And I wondered if Jazz or Amanda had anything to add to that conversation around support networks and how they might have supported you in your journey around being physically active and playing sport as well.
I'll go mad. Saw you nod along. Similar, I think family for me was huge in terms of support network, but I guess the different roles that they play. Like, my dad was a huge person in my support network, but he was from the driver of high performance, be the best you can be. And that didn't just relay into my sport. I guess that is in way of life, but that resilience, and he really pushed that and found that side of me. But then my mum brought the side of like the reality away from that is the happiness. And I think every time I came home, if I did cry and want to quit netball or quit sport, she was like, well, then it's making you cry, you quit. Whereas my dad would have the other side. And I think having that balance is really important, no matter what your support network looks like, but having both sides to be the yin and yang for that, to make sure that you're making a balanced decision on what you're doing. And with my friends, like I had my friends in netball and in sport that could bring that side and connect me to it and make sure I love it. But I also had my group of best friends that honestly couldn't care less if I played sport or not. And that was a really nice grounding experience, that isn't how they valued me. And like both the Amanda and Esther have said, like that identity is a huge thing when you are in sport, is who are you away from it? And people refer to you as it. I get called, oh, Jazz the netballer all the time. So it's hard to find out who you are away from that. And having people around you that don't see you as that person, I think is really important in your support network.
Totally. And I like the point that you picked up on around everyone's understanding of physical activity and the value they place on it. And for your dad, that was around sort of that performance element. And I think it's an important thing for, you know, parents to be aware of these days, that physical activity is broader than just the value we might get from playing sport. It's all those other things around it. So being able to increase that awareness of the happiness, as you say, the social connection, yeah, that's really important to see. Amanda, did you have anything you wanted to add on this topic?
Yeah, just how massive or how important it is for you to surround yourself with the right people, and it doesn't, like Jay said, necessarily be people who play sport as well. It's good to have a variety of people, have that kind of balance. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's when we go through hard times, it's hard to ask for help. So having good people around you that know you well, so when those hard times do come, happen, and you don't have the confidence to reach out, they know that something's up, and they'll reach out and ask you if you're all good, and just help you through it. So yeah, super important.
And I think that segues nicely into our next topic on role models. So we might start back with you, Amanda, but I'm just really interested for you to share who might have been some of your role models when you were younger, and what was it about them that inspired you in your physical activity or sport journey?
Cool, yeah. I was like the biggest fan of Ma'anonu. So if you don't know him, he's a rugby player, but I just thought he was a man, and he's from Wellington, and he was from my club. But yeah, I think growing up, I didn't really see a lot of female athletes or sports people. So I did look up to older girls in my teams, so that some of them were my role models. But it's really cool to see that there's so much more emphasis on pushing our females on social media, or like having their games on TV. So just a lot more exposure for the young girls to see growing up. And the whole quote, if you can see her, you can be her. I love that, because it's so true. Because growing up, I didn't know that girls, I knew some girls played rugby, but I didn't know it was a thing. But it's been a thing for a while, but we're only kind of getting to know that now, right? But sorry, what was the other question?
And specifically, what was it about them that inspired you? I think you've already touched on it a wee bit, but
yeah,
I think the quote that you just said, if you can see her, you can be her, is a really powerful one. And it's been great to see the Women's World Cups that have been hosted in New Zealand over the last couple of years, and the FIFA one still to come this year. So that's been a great opportunity for those athletes to become a lot more visible. And I think it's really important that we keep driving the momentum, and it's great that you three are here today to sort of lift that visibility within the Wellington region, and as well, particularly during Women and Girls Week. So Esther, might pass over to you now. Talk about your role models.
Yeah, sure. Jasmin, you'll like this. I was pretty into netball as well when I was young. So I really liked, I was really looked up to Irene van Dijk. I just thought she was so incredible. She was the most accurate, shooter that I'd ever seen, and she was inspiration. And I think her name was Temepara George back then, but it might be different now. She was like an incredible player, and I think I played the same position as her. So I was like centre wing A at the time. So I really looked up to them. And then an incredible runner, Nikki Hamblin. She's got I think she had the 800 meter record for a while, but she was just an incredible athlete, 800, 1500 meter runner in New Zealand. So I really looked up to those three women. But back in the day, I also think that when I was 15, I was just so in my own world and obsessed with running. And sometimes I probably didn't look up to other people as much as I should have, because I think it's hard to take a 15-year-old's mind out of, their own life at the time. But those are some that I remember when I was younger that I really looked up to.
Thanks for that, Esther. And it's great to see a few people also putting in the chat who their role models are, or superwoman and girl, and why. So I'd love to hear a few more stories. So thanks, Samantha and Graham, for sharing yours. Jazz, be interested to hear who your role models were and how they inspired you.
Yeah, thanks. It's funny when listening to Amanda speak and say that actually her role models when she was younger were males, but the females role models in the lives were the ones that were close to. And I feel like I'm really similar, thinking back to who my role model was. Like, I really looked up to Muhammad Ali, and I think that was a massive influence because in my household he was someone that was really admired and looked up to. And I guess the reason why is not only was he an incredible athlete, but his other reasons, like he brought his reasons why into his position in front of people, and he really fought for that. And that's, I guess, the reason why I really liked him and the household liked him. But kind of represents, I guess, the lack of media coverage or coverage of female athletes when we were younger. Is my role models that were female were the ones that I could see in my team, because I didn't see them on TV. Like, I can think of a few now in terms of, like, Jessica Ennis was a huge role model as I got a bit older, because that started having a little bit of visibility. And Simone Biles, the gymnast, is a huge person I've looked up to and inspired by a bit of later in my life. But yeah, when I was younger, I think the females who I looked up to were those who were close to me, because they were probably the only women that I could see in sport, really.
Yeah, and quite interesting to know that, you know, there might be some famous role models, but also the people that can be super influential are the ones that you are closest to, and yeah, have that sort of deep connection with as well. So thanks everyone for sharing those. Quite keen now to just reflect back on some of the key lessons you might have learned across your lives at the moment, and you're all still very young, so still plenty more to learn, I'm sure. But reflecting back, what would you tell your younger self when she was having a hard time? Jazz, I wondered if you might want to start us off this time.
Oh, I don't know. No. Oh my God. I would like to tell her to sometimes go with her gut more, in terms of making choices, and that's whether it's a sport thing or even not in so much sport. Just doing something, and it kind of goes back to happiness. Go with the thing that in your gut knows that makes you happy, and that's why you make the decision, because I don't think you can regret that type of choice. Yeah, and just I'm quite happy with some of those decisions that I made, and I don't regret the push that I guess and the commitment I made to sport. But I do wish maybe I listened to that gut a bit more, and trust yourself, because I guess, talking about youth voice, we probably weren't given it so much when you're in that environment. So if no one else is giving it to you, then try and do it for yourself. But I don't think I knew that I could do that because no one really had asked me.
Awesome. Esther?
I think it would probably just be, sorry, you can probably hear my dog. He just woke up. It would probably be like, play the long game. Like, if you do want to be in sport for a long time, like, don't try to take shortcuts. And to be a really successful senior athlete, you have to look after yourself at a young age. And I think I was not in that mindset. I was completely caught up in the moment and, you know, looking at trying to be a better runner by doing anything at all costs. So I think if I had someone telling me, you know, long term, to be a successful athlete, you need to really look after yourself, look after your body, fuel yourself, all these different things, I think it would have helped me so much at that time. So yeah, just be patient, look after your body, and play sport sustainably. And also, probably just go back to having fun while you started sport in the first place. So yeah, those are probably some of the things I'd say to myself.
Awesome. And how about you, Amanda?
Yeah, probably just like having a bit more grace for myself. I think, it's kind of easy to be a bit, everyone's their worst critic, and be a bit hard on yourself, but just having that grace and patience, like Esther said, and just knowing that things are going to be okay. Like, yeah, storms don't last forever. Things are going to be all right. And like these hard times, you'll get through them and you'll be better. You'll be better for it.
100%. Good to have that mindset. Just encourage anyone to pop any questions that they have, and we'll try and answer those over the next few minutes. We have got one come through from Simon now. So any advice for a father who is trying to encourage his daughter to play sports? Who wants to take a go at answering that one?
I'll jump in. And Esther, you can follow. Sorry, if on there. Kia ora, Simon. I think I'm quite really passionate in this space because for me, I have such a good relationship with my dad, and I think it's because of that, because of his time he spent with me in that space. And if, Simon, that's where you've picked up that something your daughter is interested in, use it as a way to connect with her, because she'll see that special. And that's where her enjoyment will come in her sport and being physically active, is she'll realise it's really quality time to spend with you. And sometimes pushing her could be hard, but find that limit, but don't make it so it's too much, because you don't want to push too hard for her enjoyment to disappear. So acknowledge that you're in a space that can really drive her and challenge her, but know when it's time to stop. But you'll know that as her papa, you'll see that when that's time, and know that you'll be able to make that right decision. But be conscious that you might be passionate about sport as well, but don't live your dream through her. So just ensure it's what she wants it to be. But that's an amazing relationship that you two can hold together, that will be able to be the basis of your relationship until she's older too. Esther?
Yeah, I love how you say that, Jasmin, because I remember my dad would take me to all my races back in the day, and they were like some of the funnest times I had with him. So yeah, I reckon just like letting her find what she enjoys. So like giving her the time to try different sports, and, finding the ones that are the funnest for her. Because like what was said before about women needing to have fun to be successful in sport. And I think that is the main, and being happy. So like just making sure you give her the space to like try different things, realize that she really likes this sport or this sport, and just guide her through that. And like Jazz said, go along with her, because it's some of the best memories I have as well as a junior athlete were going along with my dad.
Great question, Simon, and great answers from our panelists there. The next question we've got is from Graham, and Graham says, you've all had multiple coaches. Are there things you wish they have been better at working with women and girls when you were involved? And as a follow-up question, do you think many coaches have an awareness of female health and physiology and its impact on the female athlete? So Esther, I feel like you might want to answer particularly the second question there.
Yeah, I didn't want to jump in too soon in case someone else also wanted to speak, but no, I appreciate that question. I think, the second part of the question I will answer. I think, no, they definitely don't have enough of awareness about how to coach females and understanding of female physiology and psychology. I think some coaches do, but they've done research over in the UK about asking young girls if they feel like their coaches have enough knowledge about female physiology, and the answer was predominantly no. And we've asked that question as well to distance runners in New Zealand, and again, the answer was predominantly no. And I think just a general understanding of things like Red S, so when a cycle maybe goes missing, what can a coach do to help, and what are some things that they can think of to make sure that they're empowering those young girls to seek help when things like that are happening. So I think there's a massive need for change in coaches and trainers and their knowledge around female physiology and psychology. And I think back to degrees that people have gone through, and I know for a fact that a lot of them do not focus on the differences, and they don't focus on the menstrual cycle and really important factors that that young girls are going through, and then into their senior years as well. So yeah, there's a massive space for change. And I'll do a little plug here. We have a free introductory course on Femmi at the moment. So it's a 5-video series, and it talks about menstrual cycle, female sex hormones, red S, healthy hormones, that sort of thing. So it's fairly short, 2 to 3 minute videos, and we'll soon be launching a short psychology course as well. So those are free. You can send them around to whoever is in your circle of coaches. And I think it's just a great way to start to introduce that topic, and know that I know these conversations for some people can be hard and maybe uncomfortable to begin with, to even bring this up. But if you do it in the way where you make them feel comfortable, you make sure that potentially they've got parents with them, or there's a group of them, so they're not alone, and they have friends to support them. And then just create an environment where talking about having your period or the menstrual cycle is not weird anymore and not uncomfortable. Because like I can think to groups in New Zealand, Zoe Hobbs, one of the sprinters, the best sprinters in New Zealand history, her coach is a male coach, and he's created an environment where they can say, you know, I'm feeling really knackered today, I'm a couple of days out from my period, or they may be on their period, and he's absolutely fine with pulling back the training on the day. So he's really created that by having those conversations and opening up that space for them. So yeah, there's massive need for change, and I could talk about it forever, but I will stop speaking now and open it up to someone else.
Thanks, Esther. And yeah, totally agree that we need to be normalising these conversations and having them in really supportive and inclusive environments to ensure the needs of the women and girls remain at the heart of what we do. We've got probably time for one more question, and Samantha's popped one in the chat. So as advocates in this space, what are some noticeable strategies you have implemented or would like to see to ensure gender equity in sport? It's a big question, but someone want to take a go at answering that?
Yeah, I can jump in. Yeah, I guess like the first thing that came to mind with that question was yeah, like I feel like these days, especially in women's sport, there's a big push for, like, in terms of the management side, whether it's a coach, a physio, manager, whatever it is, that they have to be female too. And I don't know, this might be an unpopular opinion, but for me personally, I don't really care whether it's a male or female. Like, for me, it's the best person for the job, personally. But in saying that, I feel that there needs to definitely be better pathways for females to upskill and have opportunities to be in those roles. Yeah, so that's my 10 cents.
Thanks, Amanda. Esther, did you want to say something on that?
Yeah, I feel like I'll jump in. I think, like, I know quota systems, some people don't agree with them, but I think in the current state of the world, they're a great thing. So like Raylene Castle, I think she's like the head of Sport New Zealand, High Performance Sport New Zealand. You probably all know this, but she said to the NSOs they had to get 40% of their board to be female versus male. And I think all of them have done it except one, and they basically threatened them with them not getting funding if they don't do it. So they wouldn't get as much funding. I think those sort of strategies are really good because they get things done quickly, and then they create change quickly from there, because women can look up and see that there's women on the board of these sporting organizations, and they have that inspiration to go after it too. Because like that saying, you know, that was said before, if you can't see it, you can't be it. So I do think those sort of things are really important. I think about sports media, and it grinds my gears, because I think in the US it's 4% is on women and 96% on men. I don't understand why sporting media or broadcasters aren't creating guidelines and quotas around the amount that is shown on women versus men, because I don't know if any of you have heard of the woman that just created a sports bar over in America that is only showing female sport. And I think she made $1 million in 8 months or something ridiculous. And it's just going off over there. And there is a massive increase in people that want to watch women's sport, but the actual change from broadcasting isn't keeping up. So if I was in a broadcasting position, I would say it needs to be 50-50 from now, and I guarantee those people would get really high viewership because the want is there and people are really interested in women's sport. So that would be something that I would do if I had that power.
That's great, Esther. And it's actually, I've just had news in that all organisations that meet the criteria for that gender equity policy within New Zealand have now met that 40% governance target. So good to see some progress being made in New Zealand, and also in the media space. The numbers have been tracking up from 15% to 25% over the last few years. So still a long way to go, but good to see that we are making some progress. I'm just conscious of time, and our panelists have given us some really valuable insights today. So I want to say a big thank you to you, Esther, Jazz, and Amanda. And I think there's been some really cool key insights that have come out, particularly around, really understanding the why women and girls participate and why they might see value in it. Understanding how physical activity can be used as a way to overcome some different challenges. Really looking at that visibility piece alongside value, and understanding that in order to if you can see her, you can be her. And yeah, coming back to that overall factor of it's got to be enjoyable, it's got to be fun. Those are some of the main reasons why women and girls want to participate. So thank you to the audience as well for asking questions and answering some of those questions in the chat as well. And just like to encourage you to keep thinking about how you and your own roles can continue to support women and girls, whether it's through their participation, whether it's through making them feel more valued or visible in the spaces that they are in. So thanks, everyone. We've got a survey link that's been posted in the chat, I think. So encourage you all to fill that out and give us some feedback on today. But yeah, just want to say massive thank you to the panelists and everyone for joining, and we will close off with a karakia. Tuia ki runga, tuia ki raro, tuia ki waho, tuia ki roto. Tuia ki te here tangata, ka rongo te po, ka rongo te ao, homie, huie, tae kie. Thanks everyone, and have a great afternoon. Ka kite.